you'll be able to watch the PowerPoint presentation on your computers.
When we get
I just received a warning that said connection lost. Everybody still appears to be there, but scary.
It is now 7 o'clock, and I will call the meeting to order. Can I please get a roll call?
Vice President Anderson. Vice President Anderson.
Here.
Councillor Blakely.
Here.
Councillor Forbeck.
Here.
Councillor Keys.
Here.
Councillor Levy.
Here.
Councillor Preschel.
Here.
And President Duncan.
Here.
All councillors are present.
Will everyone please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening, under special orders of the day and announcements, we have a proclamation declaring Friday, June 19th, 2020 as Juneteenth Day. And I've been asked to read the official proclamation. Whereas President Lincoln issued an Emancipation Proclamation freeing all slaves on January 1st, 1863. And whereas on June 19, 1865, Major General Robert Granger gained control of Galveston, Texas for the Union, whereupon he proclaimed that all slaves in the state were free. And whereas the anniversary of the June 19th has come to be known as Juneteenth, a day for celebrating freedom from slavery and recognizing the African American story of resilience and perseverance. And whereas committed and concerned residents are dedicated to bringing our community together in yearly celebration of the proclamation that all our people are free. And whereas the City of Beloit stands for equality among all people and stands firmly against discrimination, abuse of power, and excessive use of force. And whereas we support the collective voices raised and heard around the world in peaceful protest of the senseless murder of George Floyd. Now, therefore, the City of Beloit Council President does hereby proclaim Friday, June 19th, 2020 as Juneteenth Day in the City of Beloit, encouraging residents to celebrate freedom and honor and the end of slavery and emancipation. And remember that all individuals are created equal, adopted this 15th day of June, 2020.
Thank you very much for reading that proclamation, Clerk Sadler. Because the next City Council meeting is not until after the 4th of July, I would like to ask Fire Chief Pease to provide a quick safety update regarding fireworks in the City of Beloit.
Hello. Beloit Fire Department wants everyone to enjoy the 4th of July, but remember, we still have a pandemic to contend with. So social distancing, frequent hand washing, and wearing a mask when out in public is still recommended. In terms of fireworks, the fire department recommends not to use any fireworks at all. Consider safer alternatives such as glow sticks, confetti poppers or colored streamers, red, white, and blue silly string, water balloons, and noisemakers. Class 3 fireworks may be legal, however, no firework is really safe. In years past, in 2017, 8 people died and over 12,000 injuries were occurred, bad enough that people had to seek hospital attention. Of these injuries, 50% of these were from children to young adults. And over 2/3 of these injuries took place from June 16th to July 16th. While a majority of these incidents are due to amateurs attempting to use professional grade fireworks or explosives, it's estimated that over 1,200 injuries were from less powerful devices such as firecrackers and sparklers. So we really don't want people to use in fireworks at all. If you choose to use a legal firework, be sure to follow the following safety tips. Never allow young children to handle fireworks, including sparklers. Obey all local laws. Never use fireworks while impaired by drugs or alcohol. Anyone using fireworks or standing nearby should have protective eyewear on. Never hold lighted fireworks in your hands. Place the fireworks on the ground before lighting to avoid accidental hand burns or dropping the firework. Never light fireworks indoors. Only use them away from people, houses, and flammable materials. Never point or throw fireworks at another person. Only light one device at a time and maintain a safe distance after lighting. Do not light fireworks in windy conditions that can affect how the sparks fly. Never ignite devices in a container. We don't want anybody blowing up anything. Do not try to relight or handle malfunctioning fireworks. Soak both spent and unused fireworks in water for a few hours before discarding. Never use illegal fireworks, and that would be your Class 1 and Class 2 fireworks. Those fireworks are really meant for display purposes, and professionals should be the ones that are permanent and licensed to do that. Should be the only ones using those fireworks. And keep a bucket of water nearby just to extinguish any small fires that may occur. And just a little note on sparklers. I know a lot of families, give sparklers to their children. Sparklers burn at about 2,000 degrees. That's hot enough to melt some metals. So, please don't give it to any children. And, have a happy 4th of July. And again, consider safe alternatives such as glow sticks, confetti poppers, colored streamers, the red, white, and blue silly string, water balloons, and noisemakers. Treat the 4th of July as a birthday for the United States of America. And don't forget the cake.
Thank you, Chief Pease.
There are no public hearings this evening, and there were no public comments received today.
Yes, but at this time, I would like to read a letter that I received from the Equal Opportunities Commission Chair. Now, these are just an excerpts because she is very passionate about this issue. The letter is dated June 10th of 2020. To the City Council members and all citizens, neighbors, friends, family, acquaintances, whoever you are in the Beloit community, and a special thanks to Councilwoman Duncan for sharing this message with you all. The Equal Opportunities Commission wishes to denounce the actions of the police officers involved in the death of George Floyd and extend our sadness and solidarity to his family and our people of color in Beloit and throughout the nation. I personally was outright disgusted and appalled at the death of yet another man of color for no apparent reason. What I have seen in the video footage was discriminatory, intentional, inflammatory, and made me sick and angry. It was absolutely wrong on every level. I want to extend my deepest condolences to the families of Mr. Floyd and the many others who have preceded him in this awful display of injustice. To people everywhere, I am listening and I hear you. There is no room for hate in our community. I am available for contact at 608-751-4933 or by email at varibizzy@yahoo.com. I'll repeat that again, varibizzy@yahoo.com, to hear you and problem solve with you. Respectfully and with love, Don Gross, the City of Beloit Equal Opportunities Commission Chairperson. So, with that said, thank you so much, Don, for your leadership and for your passion. Next, I move item 12A up on the agenda.
Item 12A is consideration of Resolution 2020-102, approving an extension of Resolution 2020-89 related to COVID-19 prevention and control in the City of Beloit.
At this time, City Manager Lori Luther will provide a brief overview for us.
Thank you. The City of Beloit remains committed to safely reopening the economy while also protecting the health of our residents, businesses, and visitors. The city's local authority under Chapter 323 of the Wisconsin State Statutes and Section 1.1 of the Code of General Ordinances for the City of Beloit provides the ability to establish requirements to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of our residents. On May 18th of this year, the City Council adopted Resolution 2020-089 that established minimum safety precautions allowing all businesses to safely reopen. On June 1st of 2020, the City Council adopted Resolution 2020-094, and Resolution 2020-102 is prepared for Council consideration tonight. While new data was provided just today from Rock County specific to Beloit, when evaluating the information available a week ago, the City of Beloit was still leading the county in the total number of cases. And while we hope that the situation is stabilizing, we still have serious concerns about the amount of spread in our community specifically. We know that there is still a disproportionate impact to our Hispanic and Latino or Latinx community, and that a high percentage of our African Americans are also being disproportionately impacted. As a result of the data available to us, and also due to the fact that there is not yet a cure, a vaccine, or herd immunity, we recommend continuation of this existing order via the resolution before you tonight. The City of Beloit, unlike the rest of Rock County, has not yet seen a reduction in the total number of cases over a 14-day period. And while it may be a little confusing, Rock County does not use the same criteria that the City of Beloit had established. Because the information for cases in Beloit proper continue to be concerning, we think that the minimum safety precautions are still appropriate and helpful in our management of this disease on a local level. Because the city also was trying to be responsive to our business community and had a higher threshold originally for the number of people in mass gatherings at 25, the county's changing to their phase 2 is now consistent with what Beloit had already established in our recommendations and the guidelines that we are using in our publicly owned spaces. We have received some phone calls from individuals who are interested in scheduling activities and large group events, such as music concerts, in our parks and in our public spaces. And we cannot predict the future, but we have been able to say that it is highly unlikely that we will be in a position to allow large groups over 50 to 250 people this summer in those settings due to the risk of contagion in those settings. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Our intention is to evaluate the data as we receive it and to continue to evaluate the appropriateness of these minimum safety guidelines.
Thank you, City Manager Luther. Can I please have a motion to approve the resolution?
Councillor Blakely here. I so move.
Okay, we have a first by Councillor Blakely. Is there a second?
Councillor Keys will second.
Okay, we have a second by Councillor Keys. Now we will take questions and discussion from councilors, beginning with Vice President Anderson. Vice President Anderson, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Thank you. Councillor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I just want to encourage everyone to continue to stay safe. Thank you.
Councillor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Yes, I don't think this is much of a question, but I think we all know that there are some places, and quite frankly, I'm mostly talking about restaurants, that are totally following our recommendations about this. And it appears there are some places that are not. And I am just wondering, can we send extra letters to those places that are not, simply encouraging them that they are not doing things very safely? Or is there a difficulty with a follow-up like this?
City Manager Luther, can you please respond to that?
Yes, thank you. So we are responding to all complaints that we receive about any establishments that are not following the required safety precautions. So Councillor Forbeck, if you can simply send me the names of any establishments that you have concerns about or have firsthand knowledge of, we will send officers to follow up to those establishments. I think we have, in general, seen pretty incredible compliance from all of our local establishments, but if there are specific places that we need to be aware of, please don't hesitate to let us know.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Lori.
Thank you, Councillor Forbeck, for that comment. Councillor Keys, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
I have a couple comments, and first is to thank City Manager Luther for the clarification and hard work to bring all the most recent dates, Beloit specific data to us, as well as the clarification, because it really, I've heard from folks in the community too that it is a confusing time, and some of it is confusing. So thank you for clarifying that Beloit has not yet met the criteria to progress. And my other comment is that, just to reiterate that, you know, we're not out of the woods yet with respect to case numbers. Overall in Wisconsin, we're starting to see a decline. But unfortunately, we're very much still in the first wave of this virus. And so I just thank everyone for their efforts, because the efforts and precautions helped delay the peak and prevented us from overwhelming our hospitals. But we still need to work to help to keep our community safe.
Thank you, Councillor Keys. Councillor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No.
Councillor Preschel, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No.
At this time, there is a motion and a second to approve the resolution. I will ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Councillor Blakely.
Aye.
Councillor Forbeck.
Aye.
Councillor Keys.
Aye.
Councillor Levy,
Aye.
Councillor Preschel,
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Under the consent agenda, all items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered at this point on the agenda.
At this time, would any councillor like anything removed from the consent agenda?
Nancy Forback, I'd like 6B to be removed, please.
Thank you. Can I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda, including 6A, 6C through 6F? Is there a first? Is there a motion?
Nancy Forback, I so move.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Forbeck. Is there a second?
Second from Councillor Blakely.
Okay, so we have a motion from Councilor Forbeck, a second from Councilor Blakely. There's a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Are there any questions or discussion? I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Vice President Anderson,
Aye.
Councillor Blakely,
Aye.
Councillor Forbeck,
Aye.
Councillor Keys,
Aye.
Councillor Levy,
Aye.
Councillor Preschel,
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Item 6B is consideration of Resolution 2020-95, approving the City of Beloit wastewater compliance maintenance annual report for 2019.
Thank you. Now at this time, we will have a report. We will have Director of Water Resources, Bill Frisbee, give us a brief overview.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here tonight to present to you the 2019 Compliance Maintenance Annual Report for the City of Beloit Wastewater Treatment Plant. The CMAR is a report card for all aspects for the operation and maintenance of the treatment plant, the collection system, our laboratory, and the pretreatment program. In 2019, we scored a 4.0 for the 6th consecutive year. The consistent 4.0 score is a testament to the hard work and dedication of our entire wastewater team. I would like to offer a huge thank you to everyone who has contributed to this success, including the city administration and the city council for your ongoing support. At this time, I'll take any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Bill, for that. Can I have a motion to approve the resolution first?
I so move. Nancy Forback.
Moved by Councilor Forbeck. Is there a second?
Vice President Anderson will second.
Second by Vice President Anderson. At this time, we'll take questions and discussion. Vice President Anderson, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, just great work.
Thank you. Councilor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No questions. Thank you.
Councilor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Well, I guess I have some comments. First of all, Bill, when I really was reading this, really kudos to you and your team. This is the kind of quiet bureaucracy that very often doesn't get, the information about it doesn't get out to our citizens. So that's really the reason I wanted to pull it from our consent agenda. Many years of perfect scores, which is great. And I was also particularly interested in our environmental initiatives that's taking place with the wastewater. I have several grandchildren who are very interested in this, and I'm proud to be representing a city that's doing such a good job that way. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councilor Forbeck. Councilor Keys, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
I have a comment that just follows with Councillor Forbeck's. I'm happy that this item was pulled off because I wanted to highlight the great work that our Water Resource Division has done to get this high rating, as well as how critical it is to have the properly maintained and operating water treatment facility. And I also am excited about the sustainability initiatives. So when I read that, I was just very impressed with how you're looking at reducing dependence upon fossil fuels by upcycling the methane, reducing dependence on chemicals, and exploring UV radiation options in the upcoming years, as well as prioritizing community education. So I wanted to also highlight that and thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Keys. Councillor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No questions.
Councillor Preschel, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Well, it's not in the report unless I missed it in all the detail, but I'd like to point out that we are a food service heavy city with big demand from our food processing industries, which I'm sure is a challenge for many cities when that's one of the benefits of having this facility that's so well maintained. And just out of curiosity, how is our capacity sitting for any future food processors that might want to arrive on our doorstep? If you can answer that, it'd be great. You don't have to. But I just wanted to point that out, that I think that presents an additional challenge to any wastewater treatment facility having that kind of volume and that kind of usage. So thank you.
Yep, so right now we're allocated at about 70% capacity. On any given day, though, we're seeing roughly 50% capacity at the treatment plant. So we do have some room for expansion, and we're doing a facility plan to prepare for the future to have the plant set through at least 2045.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay.
Okay, at this time, I just want to echo my the words of my fellow councilors and just say thank you, Bill, and all the Water Resources staff for all of your hard work, because that's a big accomplishment that our city has received a 4.0 GPA and exceeded requirements of the CMAR, which is the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Compliance Maintenance Annual Report. And more importantly, this falls under our City of Beloit strategic plan, meeting goals 1, 2, 3, and 5. So kudos to all of you and the staff. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
At this time, there is a motion and a second to approve the resolution. I will ask the clerk to call the roll.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Councillor Blakely.
Aye.
Councillor Forbeck.
Aye.
Councillor Keys.
Aye.
Councillor Levy.
Aye.
Councillor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Under licenses this evening, 7A is consideration of Resolution 2020-64 approving late renewals for alcohol beverage licenses for the license period July 1 of 2020 through June 30th of 2021. What you have before you is the second half of applications for businesses to renew their liquor licenses. There are 8 plus one that we took up at ABLCC, and the ABLCC is recommending all for approval.
Thank you, Clerk Stotler. Can I please have a motion to approve the resolution?
Councillor Keys, so move.
Okay, it's been moved by Councillor
Preschel,
Keys,
second.
seconded by Councillor Preschel. Now I'll take comments and questions from councilors. Vice President Anderson, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I don't.
Councillor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No questions.
Councillor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Keys, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No questions.
Councillor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No questions.
Councillor Preschel, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No questions.
At this time, there is a motion and a second to approve the resolution. I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Councillor Blakely.
Aye.
Councillor Forbeck.
Aye.
Councillor Keys.
Aye.
Councillor Levy.
Aye.
Councillor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Item 7B is consideration of Resolution 2020-101, approving an application for an amendment to a Class B beer and Class B intoxicating liquor license premise description to add additional outdoor seating at G5 Brewing LLC located at 1895 Gateway Boulevard, Lee Gunderson, agent. What you have before you is a result of a business trying to expand their seating capacity while maintaining social distance standards. So if you're familiar with the G5 layout, they have, it's kind of a U, their building is in a U, and then they have in the middle of that, they have a patio. And they're looking to expand a 40 by 40 section off of that patio in the grassy area to seat an additional 24 patrons so that they can kind of space out. And while this is good for this license year, they did say that they would remove that as soon as the COVID restrictions are listed.
Thank you, Clerk Stotler. Can I please have a motion to approve the resolution?
Nancy Forbeck, I so move.
It's been moved by Councilor Forbeck. Is there a second?
Vice President Anderson will second.
Okay, seconded by Vice President Anderson. Now we'll take questions or comments from councilors. Vice President Anderson, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, I do not.
Councilor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, thank you.
Councilor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, thank you.
Councilor Keys, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No questions.
Councilor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No.
Councilor Preschel, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
Well, I just have one, and I don't know if it's really applicable. During this time where these temporary things like this are coming up, have we streamlined the process as much as possible? Because it seems to me like, considering all that's going on in the last 2 months or 3 months, delaying or, having to step through a bunch of processes for the usual approval process, I could see that being a burden and a cumbersome burden at that. So I just had that question if we've done that, and maybe we have, and I just haven't heard about it. That was my only question. Thank you.
Clerk
In
Stotler,
fact,
can you answer that question, please?
Thank you, Councilor Preschel. That actually might be a criticism to some, is that I am very much a rule follower upstairs. And so, yes, we have streamlined the best way that we can, given our situation. Many of the downtown businesses that are seeking those types of extensions have already received their sidewalk cafe license and have made similar adjustments. So, at this time, yes, everybody that has requested these extensions from my office has been dealt with in a timely manner and treated consistently.
Thank you, Lori. I didn't know the answer, and that's why I asked the question, and I could see it coming up amongst, the way people might talk or be concerned, and I know we have some latitude for staff to deal with that administratively rather than going through a cumbersome process like.
And also, Councilor Preschel, Julie Christensen has
Very
something
good
to
to know.
add. Just a second.
Mark, for temporary outdoor seating areas, we're not having them go through the conditional use process if they want to make that outdoor seating area permanent.
That's good to hear.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, there is a
That's
motion.
good here. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Presho. At this time, there is a motion and a second to approve the resolution. I will ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Councillor Blakely.
Aye.
Councillor Forbeck.
Aye.
Councillor Keys. I'll come back. Councillor Levy.
Aye.
Councillor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
Councillor Keys, are you there?
There may be some technical difficulty, so we'll move forward with,
That does pass, so we'll just
Okay.
confirm with her. Under item 8A, under ordinances, we have consideration of ordinance number 3680, amending the zoning district map of the city of Beloit to change the zoning from M2 General Manufacturing District to C1 Office District for the property located at 1195 Prince Hall Drive. This is second reading.
and at this time, our Community Development Director, Julie Christensen, is here to address any questions that councilors may have at this time.
Just want to make a note for the record. He's fallen off of the call and appears to be getting back on the call right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
This is a second reading, so unless the council has questions, you feel free to move forward.
Okay, can I please have a motion to approve the ordinance? Is there a motion?
This is Councilor Preschel. I so move.
Okay, there's a motion by Council Preschel. Is there a second?
Nancy Forbeck, second.
Okay, a second by Councilor Forbeck. Now I will take any questions or comments from councilors. Vice President Anderson, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, not at this time.
Councilor Blakely, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No, thank you.
Councilor Forbeck, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No questions.
Councilor Keys, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
I do not, thank you.
Councilor Levy, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No.
Councilor Preschel, do you have any questions or discussion on the motion?
No.
At this time, there's a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. I will ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Vice President Anderson.
Aye.
Councillor Blakely.
Aye.
Councillor Forbeck.
Aye.
Councillor Keys.
Aye.
Councillor Levy.
Aye.
Councillor Preschel.
Aye.
And President Duncan.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Item 9 is appointments. The individuals about to be named have been nominated for a seat on a city board, committee, or commission. Each nomination is subject to confirmation by the city council. Approval of appointment will be accomplished by one motion, unless a council member requests to take up a nomination separately. There are several this evening, so bear with me as I read them. Under the Alcohol Beverage License Control Committee, incumbent Henry Clement to a term ending June 30th, 2023. Martin Dench replacing Brittany Keys to a term ending June 30th, 2021. Allison Semrau replacing John Metter to a term ending June 30th, 2023. And John Wong replacing Jeffrey Klett as the school board district representative to a term ending June 30th, 2022. On the Board of Appeals, we have incumbent John Peterson to a term ending May 31st, 2023. Kara M. Purviance-Hawes, replacing Carolyn Hansen to a term ending May 31st, 22. And Felipe Rodriguez, replacing John Schroer to a term ending May 31st, 2022. Community Development Authority, Martrius Heiler, replacing David Becker to a term ending December 31st, 2023. To the Equal Opportunities Commission, incumbent Don Gross to a term ending June 30th, 2023. Regina Stevens, replacing Yolanda Saffold to a term ending June 30th, 2021. To the Landmarks Commission, Monette Bebo Reinard, replacing John Winkleman III to a term ending October 31st, 2021. To the Municipal Library Board, incumbent Elizabeth Magnus to a term ending June 30th, 2023. Megan Miller, replacing Amanda Insunza, sorry about that, to a term ending June 30th, 2022. Park, Recreation, and Conservation Advisory Commission, Spencer Anderson replacing Joe Stottleman as the Beloit School District Representative to a term ending September 30th, 2021. To the Plan Commission, Pablo Terral replacing Eric Otis Johnson to a term ending April 30th, 2023. And to the Police and Fire Commission, Thomas M. Johnson replacing Mardell Jacobson to a term ending April 30th, 2025.
Okay, thank you, Clerk Stotler. Our Appointment Review Committee has been very busy. Can I please have a motion to approve the appointments?
Counselor Blakely, I so move.
Okay, we got a first by Counselor Blakely. Is there a second?
Counselor Keys will second.
Okay, seconded by Counselor Keys. Are there any questions or discussion? If not, there is a motion and a second to approve the appointments. I will ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Vice President Anderson. Counselor Blakely.
Aye.
Counselor Forbeck.
Aye.
Counselor Keys.
Aye.
Counselor Levy.
Aye.
Counselor Preschel.
Aye.
President Duncan.
Aye.
And Vice President Anderson, are you still with us?
I understand that he needed to recuse himself.
Okay, thank you.
So noted.
For the record, that passes 6-0 with Vice President Anderson recusing himself. Item 10 is counselor activities and upcoming events.
Also with those counselor activities and upcoming events, we will also have counselors to give committee reports if they so choose. So we'll begin with Vice President Anderson.
Yes, thank you. So I won't really give much of a update on the committees because the last several agenda items were committee activities, but just quite a few things going on lately. First off, I want to congratulate the class of 2020. I'm sure this is probably the most unusual time to finish high school, but you made it, and good luck on the next chapter of life. And I just want to let everybody know the reason I did recuse is my brother and my girlfriend are both really wanting to get involved in our city committee, so I decided to recuse, but I'm super excited to see so many people that applied. It's great that we're having so many people getting involved, and I hope more people do because we still have several committee vacancies. Over the last couple weeks, I've also volunteered at Farmers Market. Please check it out. I know it's not exactly the same, but it's still great to see that coming back slowly. And another thing I participated in was there's a couple prayers going on last weekend. I know there's one going on this weekend too. I briefly was at the Brown Hatchell Park just as everybody's leaving, but I did go to Hackett Elementary and participate in that one too. A lot of that is dealing with the incident in Minneapolis with George Floyd. So kudos to everyone still getting involved and still making their voices heard. One thing I did this weekend was I toured the Merrill Community Sharing Garden. I know Councillor Keys has been there several times in the last couple of weeks, but I also wanted to share that this Saturday, if you want to go volunteer, you can go this Saturday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's located at 1322 Porter Avenue, and we can really do some good work, and I know that Caleb, the one that runs the garden, could definitely use some help. One of the last things I wanted to say is just wanted to give a shout out to Chris Behrens, the BMHS band director. He was named a quarterfinalist for the 2021 Music Educator Award. I had him as a teacher, so I know that that's well deserved. And then I also saw my water bill, there's some information. So if you haven't opened up your water bill yet, there's a lot of facts and figures so we can educate the public on what's going on. I know we just had a presentation on it, but if you want another look at it, it's definitely there, your water bill. Congratulations to Snappers on finally breaking ground on their new stadium. That's very exciting. And lastly, to stop talking, just have a safe 4th of July. Go out there, social distance, but just be safe. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Anderson. Councillor Blakely.
Yes, it was very gratifying, as Vice President Anderson said, to hear of so many people volunteering for city commissions. It's really a wonderful opportunity to help Beloit, and I was especially happy to hear that someone new is coming on to the Landmarks Commission. We have our next meeting tomorrow, as a matter of fact. Beloit Library Board, the Municipal Library Board, meets Wednesday, and there's rather big news at the library because they're now open for regular business. The hours are a little different from what they were in the past. The library is open now from Monday through Thursday from 9:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Friday and Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. There will be programs coming up at the library, and also drive-up service continues for those who still don't feel safe to go into the building. You're encouraged to wear masks and maintain your social distancing, but welcome back to the bigger world, Beloit Library. And everybody have a safe and happy 4th of July.
Thank you, Councillor Blakely. Councillor Forbeck.
Yes, I just have to say that I've been busy trying to support our local businesses, both retail and restaurant-wise. Also, the Equal Rights Commission, Opportunities Commission, is, I think, going to work to meet this coming Thursday, and there couldn't be a better place and more committed people who are on that commission. I'm just the council rep, so we have some wonderful citizens working on what we all know we need to pay attention to. So I'm proud to be the council rep on that. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbeck. Councillor Keys.
Thank you, Madam President. I have no committee information to report, but I also want to extend a big congratulations to our 2020 seniors for finishing during such unprecedented times. We are all very proud of you and your efforts and wish you the best. Something for our small businesses that I saw that starting today, WEDC is accepting applications for grants of $2,500 that will be issued to 30,000 small businesses across the state. So I really encourage small businesses in Beloit to reach out, to look up the application information. The application period started today and goes through Tuesday, June 23rd. So for qualifying and applying, please go to the WEDC website and pursue the small business grant. We want to see all our small businesses make it through these months of COVID precautions. And finally, personally, I just want to thank many in the community for reaching out through various mediums over the past 2 weeks regarding racial justice. So I've received over 18 emails, several phone calls, and had multiple personal conversations. And as an individual counselor, my response has included listening, learning, and expanding my community outreach. Over the past 2 weeks, I've attended the 2 faith leader-led justice prayers, as well as occupying the Riverside Park for Unity and candlelight visual. And as Councillor Vice President Anderson mentioned, I have been volunteered at the Merrill Community Sharing Garden 3 times in the last 2 weeks, and I do encourage others to come down and participate. It's a great way to meet others our neighbors and have great discussion. Also, to further my education and understanding, I've attended several virtual national and statewide meetings, including the Emergency Virtual Town Hall, A Nation in Peril, hosted by the NAACP, the Racial Justice Summit, hosted by Real Talk in Wisconsin, as well as Reimagining Public Safety, hosted by Local Progress. I want to close, I want to close by just saying, regarding the city's response so far, I've been very proud of all the efforts, including our police officers engaging and attending community justice and unity events, as well as our city's written response to a recent community demand letter. I was very pleased to learn that Beloit is in compliance with the 8 That Can't Wait recommendations that has been shown to reduce police-related violence up to 70%. And I appreciate we still have work to do regarding racial justice in our community, and I look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Keys. Councillor Levy.
No report.
Councillor Prushel.
Well, like Councillor Anderson mentioned, I also volunteered at the farmers market for the first 2 weeks, and the second week was even better attended than the first week, and it seems to be running very well. It's pretty encouraging. I got a nice feedback from some of the downtown store people, restaurants and stores. Both are encouraged by the response to the farmers market, so that was good news. I also noticed that our parks crews cleared out the debris in front of the jammed up against the Wood Family Fishing Bridge, and I know it's been accumulating there for a couple of years, and it's quite a project, and the timing and everything has to be just right, and so that's very encouraging. It's really good to see that cleaned out, and I'm sure a lot of people noticed it. And the river walk along the powerhouse continues to make progress. And I would like to add to Sherry's report on the library. They have added external access points so that people can be out in the parking lot and use their Wi-Fi very easily, get good solid signals out there without having to enter the building. They did that earlier to facilitate the use of their resources by people when they were not open physically for entrance. And also, it looks like the Plan Commission this week will have quite a few things on their agenda to talk about. So we're looking forward to a complete meeting. And if anybody's interested in commenting on any of the proposals before the Plan Commission, this Wednesday night at 7 o'clock would be the time to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prushel. And I just want to mention that the Wood Family Bridge, we clean that every year. So just wanted to mention that. Now, my comments. I just wanted to let everyone know that I had an opportunity, along with Councillor Keys, to participate or to listen to the NAACP virtual town hall meeting. So I want to thank Dorothy Harrell for that invitation. And then I also attended the Greater Beloit Economic Development, Finance, and Audit Committee meeting, and along with Vice President Anderson, the Appointment Review Committee meeting. So we are still looking for many talented volunteers to serve on our committees. Some of the committees are the Alcohol Beverage License Control Committee, our Appointment Review Committee, the Board of Appeals, the Board of Review, the Community Development Authority Committee, Equal Opportunities Commission, the Landmarks Commission, Municipal Library Board, the Park Recreation and Conservation Advisory Commission, the Plan Commission, and also our Police and Fire Commission. So those are some of the committees that we have. If you're interested, please feel free to look at our City of Beloit website or call our Executive Assistant, Pam Lathrop, at 608-364-6614. I also want to give a special thank you to all of our City of Beloit staff for their hard work during this crisis, because we know that it has not been easy for any of us. And I want to encourage all residents to please continue to practice social distancing, wear a mask, I have mine right here, and wash your hands. And let's do something that we can all do, and let's spread more love throughout our city. Next, we'll go to item 11. We have a quick announcement from our city manager, Lori Luther.
Thank you. Before we move on to the CAFR, I wanted to make a very quick public announcement that beginning Wednesday of this week, Riverside Park will start closing at 10 p.m. rather than midnight. Staff has the ability to make this adjustment temporarily, but we will be bringing forward an ordinance for council's consideration in July. That would be in keeping with all of our other parks, and we think that that is appropriate. So you will see more on that in the future, but public information will be widely distributed tomorrow. New posting will go up by Wednesday morning, and that will be effective again Wednesday evening of this week.
Thank you, very important announcement. Thank you very much for that. Next, we have item 11A.
Under item 11A, we have the 2019 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
At this time, we will have our Finance and Administrative Services Director, Eric Miller, to introduce the city's financial consultant. Eric.
Thank you. As required by state statutes, we have engaged an independent CPA firm, Baker Tilly Virchow Krause LLP, to perform a complete examination of the city's financial statements and accounts. They have concluded that the city's financial statements as of December 31st, 2019 are fairly presented in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So with us tonight, virtually, is Carla Gogan from Baker Tilly to walk us through the audit report.
Good evening and thank you. I am Carla Gogan, as Eric mentioned, a partner with Baker Tilly, and with me on the line as well as Justin Hoagland, a manager with Baker Tilly. So we certainly appreciate you inviting us to tonight's meeting to provide this overview, and we appreciate your willingness to accommodate a virtual presentation. I'm going to go through two documents tonight, and then I will pause at the end for any questions or comments. We do issue a number of deliverables to the city. First, as has been referenced as the CAFR, that is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report for the year ended 12/31/19. We also issue the highlights document, which I have up on the screen. And then we also issue a reporting and insights document, which for some of you, if you recall, we used to issue the management's response to those charged with governance and management. That deliverable replaces what we've issued in the past. So I'm going to start with the financial highlights, and then I'm going to shift over to the reporting insights document. When we go through the highlights, we focus on some governmental activities of the city, that which is financed primarily by tax dollars and intergovernmental revenues. I will go through some debt statistics. The city does use debt to finance certain long-lived assets and capital projects. And then I will focus on some of the utility results, which is financed by user charges to your customers. So moving to the first page, we'll focus on the general fund. The general fund is the main operating fund of the city. When you pull your budget document together, there's a lot of time that you focus on your general fund. It incorporates your public safety activity, public works, general administration. And what we present to you are two slides, the first being on fund balance. And fund balance is the equity or the working capital, if you will, of the general fund. And it's broken down into the various categories. And on the bottom of this page, it gives further definitions of what those categories mean. And we always like to provide trend analysis. So in this case, we've given you 2 years worth of information, your total fund balance. And again, your fund balance is the assets in the general fund, primarily cash and receivables, less any liabilities that are more liquid in nature, which are generally your accounts payable and other accrued liabilities. and what you have left is your fund balance. Your unassigned fund balance is not classified for any particular purpose, and it is available to the city for its use. At the end of 2018 and 2019, the city did not have any items that fit within the assigned or committed category. Restricted fund balance, the city has a pedestrian bridge, and it does have restricted funds that are to be used for the maintenance of that bridge. And then there's non-spendable fund balance, and this represents assets of the city that are not readily liquid. And so the two primary aspects of this are in inventory, which the city does not typically sell its inventory. This is related to public works. And then the city the general fund has advanced or loaned money to the golf course. And that advance has stayed steady from 2018 to 2019. And that is what makes up non-spendable fund balance at the end of the year. Again, all the various categories make up the totals. What I think is important to look at is how did you end up with these results? You adopted a balanced budget for 2019, and you can see that your actual results, you ended up with $2.8 million of net income. And there's really three primary drivers associated with that. The first is that you closed TIF number 6, and there was approximately $1.5 million that was transferred back to the general fund as a result of that closure. You had public works expenditures that were less than budget, which was a result of a reduction in contractual services, vehicle maintenance, and fuel costs. And then there was a reduction in costs related to license and permit activity. So overall, positive financial results for the general fund. And as you can see, an increase in fund balance of $2.8 million. So next we're going to look at a metric related to fund balance. So if you keep in mind, I'm going to be talking about unrestricted fund balance, and it's this amount here. It's the $11.9 million. And we take a look at that in comparison to the city's policy regarding fund balance. It is a difficult environment to grow fund balance. To grow fund balance, you have to look at your tax revenues, and with levy limits, that is difficult to do. There's not a lot of levers to push and pull in terms of how to grow fund balance. It's usually a result of potentially one-time occurrences, for example, the transfer from TIF 6 to the general fund. But it's important to have adequate reserves on hand for things that are unexpected, for example, the pandemic. You've been talking about that tonight, and while that doesn't impact the 2019 financial results, it has the potential of impacting the 2020 financial results. The city has a fund balance policy, which we've noted here in the red line, which is to maintain unrestricted fund balance 25% of its expenditures in the general fund. And that 11.8, almost 11.9 million, at the end of the year, you had 39% in unrestricted fund balance. So you were in excess of your policy, 25% versus 39%. You can see here we like to show a 5-year trend where it was as low as 26%, but again, in excess of your policy. It grew slightly for the last 4 years, and then again, but again, this was driven by the three things that I mentioned in terms of your results for 2019. I'm going to move then forward, again, positive results from a fund balance perspective in the general fund, your main operating fund. I'm going to move then to and look at two different metrics related to debt. When we were talking about the general fund, the two primary revenue sources in your general fund and your governmental funds is taxes and intergovernmental or grant revenues. Another way that you finance projects is through the issuance of debt, and you issue general obligation debt, which is secured by the taxing authority of the city. The utilities also issue revenue bonds, and that is secured by the charges for services that the utilities charge. Again, the city has a policy related to its outstanding debt, and that is noted here at the top. By state statute, the city is limited in its GO debt to 5% of its equalized value. That's the top line here. This represents 5% of the city's equalized value. And you can see for the last 5 years, it was fairly steady from 2015 to 2017, then took more of a jump in 2018, and then a really nice bump in 2019. This is your GO debt limit. And in comparison to that limit, you're at 57% related to that limit. But you've said that that's what the state allows by state statute, but the city limits its GO debt to be 3 to 3.5% of its equalized value. So the city at 3.5% of its equalized value, this number here would be about 62.5 million. And then if we were to compare the 50.5 million to approximately 62.5 million, you're at 81% of your capacity. I shouldn't say capacity. You're at 81% of what you've specified your debt limit to be. Down below, it shows the breakdown of your debt between general obligation and revenue bonds. And then the last slide that I wanted to mention is related to your debt service. So you have debt outstanding and you have to service that debt. And service that debt in addition to all of your operating costs that you have at the city. So if we take all of the operating costs of the city, which is down here, and we only look at non-capital, and that is because capital costs can vary fairly significantly from one year to the next. So we look at your operating costs and all your governmental funds, and you're at about 48.6 million. And take a look at your debt service that you pay, and you're at about 8.5 million. And that's what this metric here is above. I've mentioned this in the past. If you think about debt service, it's similar to a mortgage or a rent payment. When you think about how you spend your monthly budget or your annual budget, how much do you spend on a mortgage or your rent payments is somewhat of a similar principle here. And for communities of your size, we see it, in the range that you're in. So you're definitely within a range of other communities of a similar size. And that's what these dots represent, are reference medians. These are clients of ours of a similar population. So it's one data point for you to consider. So I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to move to the utility operations. The utility operations, as I mentioned, are financed by charges for services. I'm going to go through 4 utilities, starting with the water utility. The water utility is a regulated utility. It's regulated by the Public Service Commission. And the Public Service Commission drives the return that you can earn on essentially on the plant that you have in the water utility. You're authorized at 5%. Your actual rate of return is 3.4%. I think what is equally or maybe more important is looking at the metrics, and we've noted a few here. First is the green line, or your operating revenues have stayed fairly consistent and created a nice margin between your operating revenues and the bottom line, which is your operating expenses. We then look at 3 other metrics, that being how much do you have in unrestricted reserves on hand. The 1.5 million represents unrestricted cash, and that represents 3.2 months on hand. We recommend having a minimum of 3 months on hand, so you're slightly above the recommended amount. Debt coverage. We talked about revenue bonds and how revenue bonds finance utility projects. As a part of issuing those bonds to the bondholders, they require a certain amount of essentially operating results for the water utility. And so you're required to have debt coverage of 1.25, but when doing the calculation, you do exceed the minimum, and you're at 1.48, and you've exceeded it for the last 5 years. Lastly, this shows you how you financed at the end of the year, financed your capital improvements. And you do have 56% with debt, which is reasonable considering it wasn't that long ago, within the last 20 years. I don't have the exact date that the city purchased the water utility. So it would be expected that you would have a higher debt percentage as a result. Moving on to the sewer utility. Here, the operating expenses do exceed revenues, but keep in mind that within this operating expense is $2.7 million worth of depreciation expense, which is a non-cash item. Again, your revenues and your expenditures or expenses have remained fairly consistent. Then we look at, this is an unregulated utility, so the only utility that is regulated is the water utility. And then we look at the same metrics we did for water. The first being your unrestricted reserves, which you had 9.7 million at the end of the year, which related to 14.5 months on hand. So this provides some flexibility in terms of funding projects that come up. It doesn't mean that you have to use debt. You can use funds on hand. Debt coverage, again, your debt coverage is 1.1, and you've exceeded your debt coverage this year and for the last 5 years. Here you can see that debt of 19% finances your projects. More of it is related to cash, which again, given your amount of cash on hand, is reasonable then to what you're financing through equity. We have the final two utilities, next being the stormwater utility. Again, the green line being operating revenues in excess of your operating expenses. We look at the different metrics. Unrestricted reserves, you're at almost 13 months. Again, healthy reserves, which provides flexibility when it comes for stormwater projects. Your debt coverage, you are exceeding what the revenue bonds require of 1.25 and have for the last 5 years. And then similar to the wastewater utility, again, evidenced by the amount of unrestricted reserves, you do finance or have financed a larger share of your capital improvements through equity and less through debt. And then the last utility that I want to mention is related to transit. You've had a stable 5 years of results. The state subsidy, the gray and the orange and federal subsidy provides about 56% of the transit funding, and that has stayed fairly consistent for the last 5 years. Your operating expenses, the largest share is related to salaries and benefits, which is consistent in the industry. So overall, and good for the enterprise utilities and the government. I am then going to, I want to make a few mention on the reports from the 2019. Given the format of tonight's meeting, I'm going to, without flipping through the document, I might make you dizzy by flipping to pages, but I am going to make just a few high-level remarks, and then again, I will pause and it will be opened up if you have any questions or comments. So if I breeze over something that you would like more information on, please feel free to ask that question. Or if there's something that I don't discuss or cover at all, again, please feel free to bring that to my attention or bring that up. So we've, for those of you who've been on the council, this is a new format in terms of a document. We would recommend that you take a look through this document. We did issue, I should have mentioned this first, we did issue an unmodified opinion on the city's financial statements. It's referenced or referred to as a clean opinion, or the highest level of assurance that you can receive on your financial statements. And we do plan and perform our audit to obtain reasonable assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement. And that reasonable assurance is a high level of assurance. So you should feel confident in the information that you're receiving. Management has a number of responsibilities as it pertains to preparing for the financial audit. One is to provide us with information that is auditable, with records that are reconciled. Management, they also establish and maintain an internal control environment. We do not audit the internal controls of the city, but we do have to gain an understanding of them. And we do report back to you items that we identify as material weaknesses. And I will highlight that to when I get to that point of the report. And management does also provide written representations, and that is included in this document in Appendix B. So if you're interested in terms of the types of representations that management is making, I recommend that you take a look at that. From an audit status perspective, we plan our audit. It's a risk-based approach. We consider what is happening in the local economy, in the county, in the state economy, in the national, from a national perspective. And we identify key audit areas and significant risks. And we did not change the plan for our audit once it began. From an audit approach, we always take a look at what our new accounting standards that are in play for that year. And there were two new accounting standards that the city implemented. One was governmental statement number 84, which is related to fiduciary activities. This had an impact, but not a significant impact on the city. This standard has more impacts on county operations. The city does, however, have a tax collection fund where it collects taxes that are related to the overlying districts. And so there was a new statement that was included within the financial statements and some changes in disclosures. The city also implemented Accounting Standard 88, and this was related to debt disclosures. So the standard setters asked governments to now disclose between what is considered to be a direct placement debt and that debt that is where you go out for a competitive bid and it's a negotiated sale. Direct placement debt, of which the city has very little, would be in a situation of, say, a state trust fund loan where you go directly to the state for borrowing, or I have some clients where they go to their local bank, for example, and take out a general obligation note. And that would be considered a direct placement if that bank doesn't go out for a competitive sale. The city primarily goes out for competitive sale, and that is noted within the financial statements. We do look at key risks associated with the audit. One primary risk is management's override of controls. And so as a response to that, we change our audit approach each year. We ask for different things. We have different people audit different areas. We place emphasis on different areas of the audit so that we change threshold amounts so that it isn't predictable by management. We identify key areas that we audit during the course of the audit: cash and investments, revenues, disbursements, payroll, pension, long-term debt, other post-employment benefits, and net position calculations. We did identify 3 areas where we identified material weaknesses, and we are responsible for providing those to you in writing. And those, one related to a point regarding information technology, one regarding the reconciliation of capital assets and reconciling the city's records to its capital asset program. And then lastly, the financial statement process. The city does engage us for its convenience to prepare its financial statements. And as a part of the process in doing our annual audit, we have identified material journal entries, and those journal entries are listed in this report as well. So you can see the types of adjustments that were noted during the audit process. Some of those, I will say, though, are typical entries that we have each year. Some of my clients like to have certain areas audited before developing the estimates for some of those entries. So it's not uncommon. We then list other recommendations, comments within the report. We do have some required communications where you would have heard from us before if we had anything like difficulties encountered during the audit, which we did not. We did not have any disagreements with audit. We didn't note any unusual transactions. We did not note any known or suspected fraud during the audit. We didn't identify any independence concerns. We did not identify any related party concerns. So in terms of our required communications, there's nothing that came to our attention that would require communication to the city. However, that is spelled out in writing in this report. The report, again, just to give you a reference point as to where I am, I'm on page 21 of this report, and that is not necessarily the PDF page, but the actual page number in the bottom right-hand corner. This section, pages 20 through 27, talk about upcoming accounting standards, and then just things that we think are relevant, going on in today's environment. For example, there's comments regarding cybersecurity, data privacy, and then just simply COVID-19 risks and ongoing response. There's a brief comment on page 26 that just talks about, things to be mindful of as you're navigating through 2020. Many of my clients, and I have visibility to many clients, I work with about 35 clients in different capacities. And what they're primarily concerned about right now is just, potential gaps in revenue in 2020. And so keeping a close eye on the activity in 2020. And then just a few remaining comments, and then I will open it up to any questions or comments. In Appendix A, we list the client service team with our contact information, phone numbers, and our email addresses. We are all working remotely in a response to COVID-19, so we're all working in our home offices. In my case, it's on my dining room table. But you do have our email, and if you were to leave a voicemail, that does come through our email as well. I mentioned Appendix B, which is the management representation letter. And then I also had mentioned material misstatements or journal entries that we identified during the audit process, and that is found in Appendix C. So at that point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will turn it back over to the council to facilitate any questions or comments in the format that is preferred.
I want to end by just saying special thanks to you, Carla, and Baker Tilly for your preparation and review of our audit report tonight. So thank you for that. We will take questions in this order. I will call on councilors, and if you have a question to ask, we'll have Eric Miller. Eric, can you come to the podium, please? And we will start with Vice President Anderson. If you have a question or a comment.
I have no specific questions, but I'd just say I really appreciate the thoroughness of this report, and it's nice to see the way things are changing and progressing in the city of Beloit. So once again, thank you so much for the report, and I'm sure everybody else in the council will probably agree with that this was well done, and it's great to see the direction the city's heading in.
Thank you, Councilor. Vice President Anderson. Councilor Blakely.
Yes, I just wanted to thank you, Carla, and your team for your great thoroughness and your professionalism maintaining during the pandemic crisis and all the troubles affecting our nation right now. Thank you once again. I don't have any questions for you right now.
Thank you, Councilor.
And if I could just comment, our pleasure, and I was remiss by not commenting and thanking city management and their team, because we literally went from, intending to be on site to working in a remote work environment. And so the city pivoted in a tremendous fashion and to accommodate our work in a virtual way. And so they really should be commended for their efforts to make that happen.
Thank you, Carla, for that comment. Next, we will go to Councilor Forbeck.
I have no questions, but not a surprise to hear that our staff was helpful. We're so pleased with our senior staff. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Forbeck. Councilor Keys.
Just want to say very informative and thorough report. Thank you to all parties and no questions.
Thank you. Councilor Levy.
No questions.
Councilor Preschel.
Well, thank you and staff for the clarity of this report and this audit. I think either I'm getting better at reading this stuff, or you're getting better at presenting it. Every time I see these, this is the best yet, I think, as far as the clarity goes. And I'm encouraged by some of the trends that you pointed out there. It's good to see, and it bodes well for the future, despite the pandemic and the troubles we're sure to face. But thank you all, and thanks staff, and good job on that report. Beautifully presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Prushel. And I just have to add, I did have a couple questions which I asked Eric, but I think I saw one in the presentation that was already answered. It was about the COVID-19 response. I was going to say, was there anything in the audit report referencing the COVID-19? And then my second question was, how is this audit in comparison from previous years? So I have those two. Well, actually the one, because the other one was answered during the presentation. So if you could just speak to that, Eric, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, in terms of how it relates to 2018, Carla did mention a little bit in her presentation about how we like to show comparative graphs and charts and so forth, just so we can kind of get some trend analysis. And I think relative to other audits, it was basically the same as what we have seen. There was a few highlights that she mentioned in terms of the growth of the fund balance, in terms of growth of our equalized values, which increased our debt capacity, those types of items. But otherwise, from an audit perspective, it went very smoothly, just like it has in the past. And we work very well with our auditors, so we never really have any major issues there. So I would say it was pretty much the same as it always is.
Thank you, Eric. I know I've relied on you many times. I'm sure the other counselors have too. We can call you at the spur of a moment and you're pulling out these accounting balances and letting us know, and you're also doing a very good job at the quarterly reports. We really like receiving those. And then I just want to say, more importantly, thank you and the staff for helping us to balance our budget, because that is a very hard task, but you make it look so easy. And just thank you, to the city manager, to your whole finance and administrative team. Thank you so much, Eric, for your hard work. It shows, and I just want to let you know that we all truly appreciate it. Well done, and thank you to Baker Tilly and to Carla Goggin for all their hard work. We appreciate it. It certainly takes a team, doesn't it? So, thank you. Next.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Next, now I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I so move. Nancy Forbeck.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilor Forbeck. Is there a second?
Vice President Anderson, I'll second.
Second by Vice President Anderson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are now adjourned, and this ends our city council meeting for this evening. Be safe.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Aye.
Okay.